Good afternoon. Today, I'm going to be discussing a particular framework, an idea, a seed that I want to plant in your minds that I truly believe can help us shape not just this country, not just this industry, but the world at large, if done correctly. And it's been tried and tested, and I'm going to tell you exactly how it's been tried and tested. You see, I remember my year 10 English class when our teacher made us go off and do an assignment. The assignment was pick somebody, a role model, somebody who truly inspires you, and come back and do a public speech in front of the whole class about this person. You see, I had never done a public speech before up until that day, and my teacher had sent me on this journey, and I went there and I really dug deep in my mind. Who is it that inspires me? Who is it that makes me want to be more than who I am? And the conclusion, after I racked my brains, was a man who goes by the name of Muhammad Ali. Raise your hands if Muhammad Ali inspires you or if it's just me. Muhammad Ali was a huge role model for me growing up. And I remember when I stood there on stage, I mustered up the courage. I had my notes in my hand, and you could see me shake while I stood there in front of my English class. And I stood there and I said, for me, Muhammad Ali is my role model. He's the person I look up to, and the reason why he inspired me so much is because I used to go home after school and binge watch his videos, where he used to stand there in interviews and he wouldn't just talk. He was a poet, a boxer, a family man. He would do so much. I remember a particular interview where he stood up there and he said, "Last night, I murdered a rock, injured a stone, hospitalized a brick. I'm so mean, I make medicine sick." And I thought to myself, who is this guy? You see, we see him in the ring, but he's so much more than that. The stories that Muhammad Ali brought to my attention blew my mind. As a Muslim and somebody who stood there so proud of who he was, he changed the environment that he lived in. And there's a few stories that stand to and really fill me with pride when I think about them. You see, Muhammad Ali, in 1960, represented the United States of America, went to Rome for the Olympics, and won the gold medal in boxing. He went home with this gold medal around his neck, back to Louisiana, proud of the achievement that he had done. And as he stepped into Louisiana, he saw a cafe, a restaurant, a diner, as you might call them in America. And as he stepped into this diner with his gold medal around his neck, full of pride, he went to take a seat. And just before he was about to sit down, the woman from the diner said, hold on. I'm sorry, sir. This is a whites-only cafe. You're not allowed here." And he thought to himself, I'm the world champion for the United States of America. What do you mean I can't come to this cafe? This is my country. Last week I was representing this country in Europe and I won a gold medal. That moment was one of the determining moments for Muhammad Ali, where he started to stand up against the injustice that he saw in his country. He created a movement, and he started the movement. You see, the national rights movement was filled with so many role models and people that took a stance. They were the voices of the people in this country and the country of the United States that were actually there to make active change and to make movement. Another story from Muhammad Ali was in 1966. He got drafted to go to the Vietnam War. And famously, Muhammad Ali said to everybody, I'm not going to Vietnam. Why would I go to Vietnam when this country doesn't even give me the rights? You see, my war isn't hundreds of miles away. My war is right here. I'm up against a battle in this country. This is where I want to see the change. A few months ago, in November, I went to Atlanta. And Atlanta is known as the birthplace of the civil rights movement. It is riddled with so many museums that tell us the story of how this country was able to change its state from being in a crisis, a genuine crisis where people didn't have the rights to live. There's a few people who really stand out as the voices of the people from the national rights movement. One of them being Muhammad Ali, my role model. I still remember to this day, he was such an inspiring figure in my life. He made me proud to be a Muslim, to stand up for what I believe in, no matter the consequences. When he stood up in 1966, they actually stripped him from his titles. They made him not fight for 4 years, but he stood there proud for what he believes in. Another person who stood up proud was Martin Luther King. Another one was Malcolm X. All of these people began to shape the reality of the world that they lived in because they stood for something. And not only when they stood for something did they get the limelight, but they erupted people around them that stood for what they stood for. And they were able to follow in their footsteps to believe in them. The national rights movement in the US was birthed out of a crisis of human rights, where people didn't have the rights to go to the same schools, to drink from the same fountains, to sit in the same restaurants as other people around them. But you see, the national rights movement has two sides to the story. We all know of these figureheads, the Martin Luther Kings. We all know of the Malcolm X's. We all know of Muhammad Ali's. But that's not the only way this crisis was solved. You see, the crisis had a very different side to the coin, a very different part of the equation that was instrumental to making it successful. In 1895, there was a man who was born in the United States of America called Charles Hamilton Houston. Charles Hamilton Houston was born in 1895, and he was drafted to go to World War I. And he was a black man fighting for the United States of America in World War I. And the amount of injustice and the amount of racism and the amount of pain that this man went through while on this journey representing his country filled him with so much emotion and power that when he got back to the United States of America, he went and studied at Harvard Law to become a lawyer. You see, he wanted to use the law of the land to fight against this injustice. And the way that he done that, he went to Harvard Law, one of the most prestigious law schools in the country, and began to understand the intricacies of the law to begin to dismantle it. You see, he was the first ever black editor of the Harvard Law Review, the first of his kind, and he was actually a mentor for dozens of different lawyers across the United States that were absolutely instrumental to make the changes. You see, the civil rights movement, when you look at it from afar, one thing I learned during my trip to Atlanta a few months ago is that while they had all of the public-facing work, the protests, the riots, the figureheads, the voices, there was a completely different side to the coin that was absolutely critical to make this change happen, and that was the legal side. The jurisprudence, the people who are standing in the courts of law in America talking about the fact that if you want this country to be free, if this is truly the land of the free, then why is it that in our own laws we have rights that when we go out into the streets, we don't get those rights? These lawyers that were spearheaded by Charles Hamilton Houston were the ones who were able to dismantle the system from within. I realized the importance of being able to actually understand the laws of the land that you're in, not just to create some noise from the outside. The noise is important, it's powerful, but when you can compound the noise and you can compound the role models and you can compound the movement on the ground and the people with the actual understanding of the laws, the understanding of the intricacies. Go and read the small print of the places that you're in and the organizations that you're working with and the institutions that hold the fabric of our industries. When you begin to actually understand the small print, you can approach this problem from a whole different perspective. And that perspective of law, where you can stand up in a court of law and dismantle the system, is exactly what happened in the United States of America. You see, schools in the US were segregated. They were equal but separate. That was the law. Well, you're equal, but you're separate. You go to your own schools, if you're a person of color, and the whites will go to their own schools. And in the courts of law, they were able to showcase that if you think that's justice, if you think that is equality, well, guess what? According to our own rules, that is not the case. And they were able to overthrow that law to make it that black young people and white young people were able to go and sit in the same classrooms, get access to the same education and access to the same opportunities that this land of the free promises. When we look at the civil rights movement in America, there are some key lessons that we can pull and actually apply to where we stand right now. You see, our crisis as a transport sector maybe isn't the one of human rights, but our crisis is one of talent. Our crisis is one of workforce. Our crisis is one where we do not have enough people to be able to sustain our industries for the years to come. There is not enough headspace. There is not enough creativity. There is not enough ideas to be able to uphold where this industry has to be. And unless we solve this crisis, we're going to be in big trouble. We have a panel of speakers who are really going to showcase the importance of this challenge. And unless we dismantle this challenge, unless we work to fix this problem, we are going to find ourselves in some deep, deep waters in the years to come. Two approaches, one that rallies the people and one that understands the laws. If we can take the lessons from the civil rights movement and apply them to where we are, we're in a chance of a brighter future. You see, if we talk about role models, I found myself as a 16-year-old boy who absolutely adored planes. I loved aviation. I wished nothing more than just to get to work, see an airplane and be able to touch it. That's all I ever hoped for. And with all those hopes and dreams, I remember going to one of my uncles and he sat me down and he said, "Mohammed, look, you're an Arab, you're a Muslim, your name is Mohammed. They don't hire Muslims in the aviation industry. Go look somewhere else. Maybe be a doctor, maybe be a pharmacist." The lack of role models in my circle meant that that dream was placed just a little bit far out of reach. And it broke me. And I decided, actually, no, I want to experience this. I want to go for it. I went on and got an aerospace engineering degree. I applied to work at Lufthansa. I worked there for a year. I still remember, this is a story that pains me every time I tell it because it shows you the situation that I was in. I remember sitting down, getting an interview, my first ever interview in the aviation industry. Before I had even taken a seat, I stood there, and the person who was holding my CV, he looked at me and he goes, "Mohammed, are you Arab?" And I thought, my uncle was right. Maybe they don't hire Muslims in the aviation industry. But I was up against the uphill battle, and I landed that job. And then I went on to get a job at Heathrow Airport on their engineering graduate program. When I was at Heathrow Airport on the engineering graduate program, my mind was blown about the complexities and intricacies of our industry. You see, one thing that people don't realize about the transport sector and about the aviation sector and every one of our sectors is that they are so expansive in terms of the roles and opportunities that we have access to. Every single one of us, when we start to actually dig beneath the surface, you realize that there's a very small tip of an iceberg that the public sees, and then once you join the sector, you unlock this huge iceberg of opportunities and different roles and careers and so much excitement once you get your foot in the door. And when I joined Heathrow Airport on the graduate program, my mind was blown. I was like, how is it that there's so many different roles and responsibilities? I went from 6 months in the baggage system to 6 months on the runways in the middle of the night changing light fittings to 6 months in the control tower, 6 months in the actual terminal buildings looking after the actual engineering of our terminal buildings. And for somebody who my whole life I thought aviation was just about that aeroplane, my paradigm was completely reshaped about the beauty and intricacies that come as part of our sector. And I thought to myself, how come no one talks about this stuff? How is it that nobody ever speaks about how many opportunities there are in aviation? So I did what any Gen Z would do. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and I started to make TikTok and Instagram videos about it. I started to teach people about what the intricacies of the aviation sector are. And after uploading 1, 2, 3, 4 videos, 5 videos, a week went by, a month went by, a year, 2 years, 3 years, all of a sudden, the community that gathered around these short, sharp, educational videos about the aviation sector, where I simply explored the breadth and depth of our sector, I was getting flooded with messages from young people saying, yo, this is so cool. I can't believe no one talks about this stuff. I want to get a job in this sector. I want to get a job in this industry. And I would help all these young people. I'd stay up all night replying to messages, just trying to get these young people to join our industry. And really the reality of all this work hit me one day when I was walking through the terminals at Heathrow Airport. I still remember I was in Terminal 2, walking through Terminal 2 about 3 years after I'd started making videos. And as I'm walking there, I see somebody who's wearing a high vis who looks up at me and they go, hold on. You're that guy. You're Mo, right? I said, yeah. He goes, man, you know the only reason I have this job right now is because I watch your videos? I thought, really? He's like, yeah, man, I've been following you on Instagram for years. I can't believe, I finally met you. You genuinely showed me, and you were like a role model that showed me what a career could be in this industry. And I thought, wow, that's unbelievable. And this happened once, twice, 3 times. I remember once I was sat in a room full of all of the early careers talent, every single young person that had been hired by Heathrow Airport, the graduates, the interns, the apprentices, all of them sat in one room. And I asked a room full of young people. I still remember it was a little stage like this, and I ran up after the event and I grabbed the microphone and I said, hey, just before everyone leaves, I have a quick question. In this room, put your hand up if it was one of my videos that made you want to join the aviation sector. I'm just curious. I want to know how many of you decided you want to join aviation and this industry, specifically this job at Heathrow Airport in the engineering industry because of one of my videos. Just put your hand up. 53% of the room put their hand up. 53% of a room full of talent said it was TikTok and Instagram videos that made them choose a career in this industry. You see, that was one side of the coin. But at the same time, I would go home and I would get messages upon messages of young people saying, hey man, I really want to get into the aviation industry, but it's so expensive to be a pilot. I can't afford to get my aircraft maintenance licenses. I've been queuing up and I've been applying every single year to trying to get an apprenticeship with the likes of a British Airways or a Chewy or an EasyJet. And I'm just not getting a role, man. Why can't I get a role? And how come when I go and apply for a university degree, I can't get my aircraft maintenance license with my university loan? Why is it that university loans only give you a degree? Why can't I get my licenses? You see, what I started to realize is, yes, we're creating some noise and we're creating movement, much like the likes of the Muhammad Ali's of the world and the Malcolm X's of the world. But what about the other side of the coin? What about the law? What about the bottlenecks that have been intrinsically designed into our industries that stop young people from pursuing the careers that they want? How do we begin to untangle those bottlenecks? How do we begin to untangle those challenges that are leading to this crisis for the sector? You see, I was really racking my brains. As an industry, collectively, we're going through this problem. It's not about one particular person putting their hand in their pocket, pulling out a massive grant and saying, oh yeah, we'll train pilots or we'll train engineers or we'll train this. We need to find a way where, using the laws of the actual industry itself, design mechanisms and funnels to be able to bring talent into our industry. And there was one particular organization that I spoke to which completely blew my mind, because they actually went and read the small print. Now, my speciality is aviation, but I have a feeling that this parallel can be drawn across all our sectors. In aviation, one of the key bottlenecks is funding. It is expensive to be a pilot. It is expensive to be air traffic control. It is expensive to pursue some of these careers that are absolutely intrinsic for our industries. So what they've done, anyone heard of ICAO? Hands up if you know about ICAO. If you don't know ICAO, and this is just so we're all on the same page, ICAO is the International Civil Aviation Authority. We all know the CAA, maybe that's a name that's more familiar with us. The CAA looks up to ICAO. So the rules that ICAO put out, the CAA that implements across the UK. In the ICAO laws, one of these teams read the small print. They done the work that the lawyers, the civil rights movement done, where they recognized that, hold on a minute, on line 4 of Annex 19. I can give you the exact details. It's actually, I can give you the exact document in case anybody wants to actually research this. It's IKO document 9082. There's a line in there that talks about the policies and the charges that airports and air navigation services can place on the tickets. Every single one of us books a ticket, right? And you get a price on Skyscanner or whatever website, and that price, all inclusive in that price, is the money that's going to go get paid to the air traffic services, the money that's going to get paid to the airlines, the money that's going to get paid to the airports. All of it is baked into this price that you see on the website. But if you begin to dismantle the rules as to how people can change that price, you realize that there's a line in there that says the Civil Aviation Authority can add a charge onto that number if they can prove that there is tangible benefit to the industry. So if you can prove that there's tangible, transparent benefit to the industry, you can add £1 onto that number. Yesterday, I drove into Heathrow Airport to drop off my mum, and as I was walking up there, I remember I was getting charged £5 to drop off my mum. Now I'm getting charged £6. So companies can add £1 whenever they deem it fit, but as an industry, why can't we just add £1 onto every person traveling and then take all that money and begin to unlock some of the bottlenecks that we have in our own industry when it comes to funding? You see, this organization, they're called IACT, has actually created a model to be able to unlock those specific challenges. And they've actually implemented it in Albania, they've implemented it in Guyana, and they've implemented it in Zambia. These 3 nations around the world now add $1.50 onto every single flight in order to create a pool, a funding pool that they can then utilize to solve the aviation skills crisis in their nations. It's genius. Because when you go into an airport, buying a bottle of water is £2.99. Like, it's less than a bottle of water. You can buy a half a Mars bar with that $1.50. But $1.50 from every person that travels through that airport can result in a pool of money that we can start to begin to iron out the intrinsic bottlenecks that are stopping us from achieving the goals that we want as an industry, solving the aviation skills crisis. See, that 2-pronged approach, we need to create role models that utilize the power of social media to get right to the palm of the hands of the people who we're trying to inspire. That next generation spends more time scrolling through social media than they do eating food. There's a reason why they call it the feed. It's not feeding their stomachs. What's it feeding? Their mind. So how do you plant the seeds for the industry? It's simple. Put the industry in the palm of their hands. You can create all of this work and all of this inspiration with the role models, but at the same time, that is not going to work unless you start to iron out the actual bottlenecks in our industry that are now then, once you create all that commotion, then you bottleneck it all because of funding. You see, Muhammad Ali has a very interesting quote which growing up I loved, and I'm going to end with this. Muhammad Ali has a quote where he says, you gotta fly like a butterfly and sting like a bee. All the inspiration that we create, all the role models that we create, that's flying like a butterfly. Beautiful, amazing, looks amazing from the outside. But when we start to get into the legal side, when we start to get into the laws and the regulations and Annex 1.347, and this line means this, and you can stand up and you can prove it, that's what it means to sting like a bee. So as an industry, we need to learn how to fly like a butterfly and sting like a bee. My name is Mohammad Taher, aka the Airport Guy. Thank you very much for your time.
Mohammad, stay with us on stage. Stay with us on stage. That was Mohammad Taher. Let's give it up for Mohammad. Come on. That's more like it. Thank you. Thank you. That's amazing, Mohammad. Thank you so much. It's really inspiring to hear your journey, you know, and if you can't see somebody actually doing the job that you didn't even know exists, then how can you even get to that place? So it's really wonderful to hear your journey. Thank you for that. Thank you. All right, we are going to have a really interesting panel now, and I want to welcome to the stage Donna Howard, who is Head of Social Sustainability at Kier, Anna Filby, who's founder of the Young Mobility Network, and Lisa Levy, who's a communications and engagement consultant. Let's make them really welcome. All right. Now, I'll go over here. Let me go this way. All right. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And Anna, Donna, actually, can we kick off with you? Because I know that you've been involved with some work called the Missing Millions. Can you give us a heads up about that? What's that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everybody hear me? Excellent. Excellent. And it's obviously widely known that there's a huge skills gap in our industry. And to kind of put some figures to that is so that we need something like 937,000 new recruits within the next decade. And that is just to meet the current demand. So that's not even kind of thinking of the future projects that we're sort of going to be looking at and all the sort of future. It's huge, absolutely huge. Yeah. And then if we kind of want to break that down a little bit more, and we want to sort of, we're here today because we want to attract young people, we want to inspire young people. And when I dug a little bit deeper, actually the industry as a whole, under 25s only make up 19% of the entire industry, which is such a small amount. And we need to obviously make changes to increase that, to try and inspire more people into the industry. And anybody who's interested in coming into the industry, there is an absolute massive need. We need over 24,000 young recruits every year just to fulfill that need. So that's how it's kind of labelled the missing million, because these 937,000 people that is sort of needed in the industry.
Donna, I want to pick up on, excuse me, what you're saying. I'm just wondering whether there's a certain perception about the industry. You know, can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, I mean, I love the industry I work in. Absolutely love it. It's fantastic. But unfortunately, I guess we're not a sexy industry for young people. And I think that is made up of lots of misconceptions of what the industry is about, what it has to offer. The industry is so much more than working on the tools. We absolutely need those skills, 100%. But there is so much more to the industry. There is, I try and kind of describe it as looking at the NHS hospitals. In a hospital, that hospital is not just made up of doctors and nurses. There are so many more other roles that have to be in that hospital to ensure that the place cogs over, if you like. And that's the construction industry, not just the skills that are sort of out on the ground. We need everybody. I could probably guarantee that there would be a role for everyone in the industry. Just in Kier alone, we have something like 2,000 different job roles. And that is from obviously on the tools to design, to quantity surveying, to architecture. Then we've got comms, we've got graphics, we've got roles like myself, looking at how we make differences in the communities. There's so much to the industry, and we just want to really inspire young people to come into it, and that starts at changing those misconceptions, getting people to understand. And for me, I'm a big believer in we need to kind of educate the educators, because if we can do that, we then get to the young people, we then get to educate them of what kind of career they can have in the industry, because they can have such a fantastic, successful career, really can.
I mean, that sounds fantastic, and I do want to bring everybody in, but I'm going to ask the question, which I feel that people are thinking here. What's the money like?
Very good. Very good. Absolutely.
Just got you back engaged again. It's wonderful to have a job that you love and that you're passionate about, but it's also, your lifestyle and whether you can pay the bills, in this economic climate is also really important. So I just wanted to get it out there because, I'm sure you wanted to know what the money's like.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get other benefits as well. You get the opportunity to travel. You get, no one day is the same. And you get to sort of work in absolutely fantastic environments, seeing these buildings going up, seeing the roads being sort of mapped out, all the designs. You get to kind of leave your legacy in infrastructure. So it's a really great career. And if you go the apprenticeship route, earn while you learn. absolutely, it's the biggest opportunity for you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get everybody else involved. Anna, Young Mobility Network, what's that all about?
Yes, well, I'm the founder of the Young Mobility Network, and I'm hoping to get you all involved, and by the end of this session that you all know and how to join our network. The network is essentially about connecting young professionals in the industry. I myself was working in Germany at Deutsche Bahn, the German rail company, a huge company, and I was always on the mission of exploring the mobility industry as a whole. And to do that, I founded, during the COVID times, a network to connect a bit more, to get to know the industry a bit more sort of outside of my own role, and that is what the Young Mobility Network is today. We founded it in 2020 during COVID. It was a lot of digital networking going on then. Naturally, we wanted to then get into the open sort of regional space and activities. We started with going out for a beer together, just talking about what is mobility about, what kind of roles exist, what kind of businesses exist, and that has just evolved to a point where 2024 I founded this as a company with the mission to connect young professionals across Europe. So I'm really looking forward to connecting with you in the UK industry, because at the moment we have around 600 young professionals, mostly in Germany, so we're very German network at the moment. We're across 6 different hubs in Germany, from Berlin to Hamburg, Munich, and so on. And we just launched our latest hub last year in London, and we're looking to expand that even more and offer more networking opportunities.
Well, that sounds fantastic. How do people get involved then?
Well, I've got a QR code on my back, which you can scan later. Or you can go on our website, youngmobilitynetwork.com. You can register there, and you can just sign up. You'll get a monthly newsletter with all the activities we do. We do digital networking, where you can, just sign up. We sort of invite experts to talk about things. We do field trips to companies, so we go and actually visit companies. We explore projects. We go to events together, so this is something I've heavily done in the German market. I want to do more this year as well in the UK market. So to team up, go together to events, sort of start networking. I do a bit of networking coaching as well, because at the beginning, networking can be a bit frightening as well. So you don't know who to actually go up to. Can I actually go over to that booth and sort of speak to that person? And we do like guided tours all together, sort of get to an event and speak. And ultimately create more diversity, get more people involved, and I hope that will foster more innovation at the end of the day.
Absolutely, and networking is key, because there are jobs that are advertised, and there are jobs that you also get by knowing people. I know that we're going to talk about that type of thing. We're going to sort of explore lots of different areas, but I want to bring everybody in, and the question that I want to put to you all is: do you think we're framing careers in transport as essential for solving global challenges like climate change and connectivity? Because these are really key, important issues, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. So I have to then reference Mohammed's speech, because I'd respond to that. It's all about storytelling.
Absolutely.
So we talk a lot about technical achievement, about the infrastructure we build, about the roads we maintain, about the systems we design. But we think we've got to flip that and start talking about the why, and start to demonstrate the impact we're making on society. A lot of Gen Zs and millennials I've spoken to are not just looking for a job, although a job's good because it gives you money, but they're looking for purpose. And the job market's changed considerably. You don't have jobs for life anymore. Your transferable skills will give you different routes into new jobs every 2 to 3 years. So storytelling is absolutely key. And employers, my plea to you, inspire your young professionals to tell their stories. Get them on the stages, publish their insights, and then help them to expand their networks so that you can be proud of their achievements and show that you have a route in to your business, and it will help with recruitment and it will help with retention.
And do you have any things to pick up on that? Yeah.
I would love to add to that. I think you hit the nail on the head there about utilizing the talent that already exists in organizations to be able to then showcase what opportunities are there. I work quite closely with the Royal Academy of Engineering, where the Royal Academy of Engineering approached me saying, look, Mo, we see what you've done in the engineering aviation space. Help us build similar role models across different types of engineering. So we want a role model in mechanical engineering, a role model in civil, a role model in software engineering. So what we've developed with hand in hand with the Royal Academy of Engineering is like an incubator of talent. But the question is, this isn't talent just to sit on stages. This isn't talent just to be able to be published in a magazine here or there. Because the question gets asked, where are the eyeballs of the next generation? Where's the attention of the next generation? And I know every question to the young people here, who's got Instagram on their phone? Who's got TikTok? Yeah? Who spends more time than they're willing to admit on those platforms? Right? That's where I say we are, because I do the same.
Yeah.
That's where all the attention is. So this idea that, we'll build role models and put them on stages here and there, we need to take those role models and teach them how to go viral on TikTok. We need to take those role models and really mobilize them to be able to use the platforms that young people are on in order to be those shining lights, those beacons of hope, those north stars that they can say, you know what, I want to be like that person when I grow up. That's really, like, there's a reason why they call them influencers. I really don't like that word because it comes with a lot of connotation. But we want to create the influencers that are going to influence positively towards our industries. And there's no better way of doing that than actually utilizing the talent that exists in the organization already and giving them the freedom, number one, to create content. And number two, giving them the framework of what they can and can't do. You see, because it's a gray area, they just sort of swipe it and say, no one's allowed to use social media. But if we're able to build frameworks and actually give them the red zone and the green zone and say, this is what you can talk about, this is what you can't talk about, and then mobilize them and give them freedom and time in the week to create content, you can have so much more impact than just trying to create an incubator and put them on stages here or there.
Do you have anything else to add to that? Yeah.
Building on the talent element that both were talking about, we in Kier are definitely thinking differently, because not only do we need to attract the talent, you're right, Lisa, we need to retain it. And obviously, young people, this generation of young people, actually, it's not the given that they want to stay with one employer. So what we're doing is thinking really differently on how do we retain that talent in our business. And we've kind of come to the conclusion of we almost have to let them go in order for them to come back. And what we're doing is we're putting sort of programs and opportunities together so that we get some fantastic young people who we genuinely want to keep in our industry. But we realise we need to give them exposure to other employers, to other opportunities within the industry in order for us to retain that talent. So we're working with our supply chain partners, we're working with clients, working with other suppliers who potentially are competitors who are in the same area, working with them to sort of establish a little bit of a program together in order for us to all retain that talent. So we're giving these young people the opportunity to, we work for Kier, and I'm a apprentice quantity surveyor, for example, but I also want to have a little go at that as well. But I fancy doing that with that organisation. So it's giving them the freedom, if you like, to go off, build on this knowledge, this experience and skills that they've developed with us, gain more, but bring them back to us, if you like. So it's like we're kind of known as sort of boomerang careers, if you like. So they're kind of coming back. And I think that's the way that we're going to keep skills in our industry and in our business by letting them go effectively.
Yeah. It seems a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah,
But if it works, it works.
Absolutely.
I mean, what more training and mentorship opportunities, on that idea of skills, are needed then, do you all think, to bridge that gap? What do you think?
Well, I was in a reverse mentoring situation, and it was eye-opening because she talked to me every month about her concerns and her voice was heard. If you keep talking to the same person, you get the same response and you don't innovate. But if you broaden and expand the voices that you hear, particularly young voices, it takes a completely different perspective. And so besides the fact that I really valued that time with her, it taught me about active listening as well. Listen to what people are saying. Be cognizant of the concerns they have. Because if you don't, that will become a barrier in the future. And if you're going to retain the young talent that you've invested a lot of money in training, they need to feel that they belong and that they are taken seriously and that the company will continue to invest. So listen and engage and really try reverse mentoring. It will, favourite saying of Mohammed, it will blow your mind.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, at this stage, I'd love to hear what you all think. You know, are you considering engineering as a career in transport as an option? Does anybody have any questions to anybody on the panel? I'd love to hear what you have to say. Anybody, don't be shy. This is your opportunity. I'm sure you've got questions, but here we go. We have a question.
Hi, I'm Aya. I'm a marketeer. I guess my question is, looking at all the kind of large companies we've got in the industry, what could they be doing more to attract young people?
Please, anybody, grab it. Yeah.
I've got a quick answer to this. Invest in the Young Mobility Network. Because we're going to do exactly that, and we do that already in Germany and across Europe. We are trying to give young professionals those opportunities to connect across their own sort of current role and position, because you were talking earlier about, you need to maybe let them go to bring them back and things like that, and that was exactly how I felt during my career. I didn't know if I wanted to stick with Deutsche Bahn, if I wanted to stay there and build my career there, and I just built my own network and wanted to see, okay, what other companies are out there, and I heard about TfL, Transport for London, what do they do? And I tried to, sort of explore those angles, and I think that is really important, and that's something we're offering in our sort of organization now, that we do field trips to go and explore different companies and learn about things and invite experts to talk, just to broaden your horizon. And I'm at a point where I'm looking for partners to support that, because we can only grow as a whole and grow together. And so if anybody's out there, that would be my first action item. You can come to me and talk about the Young Mobility Network and how we can grow those opportunities outside of your own organization, and that is something I can help with.
Thank you so much for that. I think that there's a philosophy that I would love to, I guess a picture that I want to paint. If we have a variety of talent across our sectors, a lot of young people who are just sat there unengaged, don't really know that you exist, what you want to do is you want to build a robust funnel of talent into the sector. Organizations like the Young Mobility Network would sit somewhere across the middle of the funnel, because they have to already be interested to show up. Right? They're not like, you're not going to get a random person wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to go to a Young Mobility Network event. So what that means is, then they need to start actually investing up the funnel, and what that can look like. I genuinely think the most underutilized yet most scalable tool that we have is the thing that we have in our pockets. Truly, it's so underutilized to actually attract that talent. We're just sat on a gold mine of opportunity, where if we give our young people the ability to tell our story through their own voices, the key is that a large organization that has a massively recognized logo, that's actually a very out of reach entity to a young person. Growing up, let's take the likes of a British Airways. Growing up, if you're interested in aviation, British Airways feels like the most out of reach company you'll ever think about, because they're this huge organization. You only ever see them when you're at the airport, and just it's a dream to ever want to go and work there. But what you don't realize is that British Airways is made up of Lucy and Abdullah and all these normal people that are made up of this organization. And we need to break this large logo approach and actually break it down and show that it's just made up of normal people. When we can utilize the normal people that are in our organization to showcase that we're just made up of normal people, then we're able to actually bridge that gap and show, like, look, I'm just a normal person going about my life, and I'm working in this company. That means if I can do it, you can do it too. And then once they're engaged and they're like, wow, that's really cool, then it's all right, I'm interested. Where do I go? Then you'd go to an organization like that, where you go on a field trip, or you do this, you do that. Social media is the way you plant the seeds, and once that seed is planted, then you can start to pull them in. But if they're not even interested in the first place, we need to muster up all that interest in the first place to then feed that top of the funnel. Because the risk is you build a funnel and no one's actually coming through it. You have all these initiatives and no one's actually showing up.
Yeah.
You have a capacity of 100 people and 20 people show up. I've seen initiatives where they have a capacity of 100 people and 20 people show up just because they never got the marketing right and they never actually got to the young people in the first place. That top of funnel, let's be oversubscribed as an industry, then we can worry about actually getting them further and further down that
Yeah,
pipeline.
absolutely.
So one of the other pieces of advice I would give is be a good neighbour. How many of you, when you walked to school or to the bus or wherever you were going this morning to get on your way, past hoarding, past construction sites? We're building all over this country. You could be in a neighbourhood for 5, 7, 10 years. I know from a fact that when I was working on a particular job for 10 years in Camden, we had local people coming all the time saying, what is the way in? How can I get a job? And one of the best ways you can invest in creating the pipeline that Mo talked about is to invest in your local community. Find out what the situation is in terms of unemployment. Find out what the situation is in youth unemployment. The experts are there, and then target your message to those people. Get them through the door. If Heathrow's a fabulous example of that. I heard a stat, and I don't know how relevant it is or whether it's been verified, but I heard that 60% of the workforce at Heathrow live locally. Amazing. If you actually have people who live locally, who are working locally, quality of life is better, you're earning good money. So employers, if you know that you've got a project that's going to be more than a couple of years, invest in your local community, really inject some energy into the community relations and see how employment and skills can be a key part of that.
Just to build on that, I agree with obviously what you were saying around social media, and that's great to obviously get the message out to people, to young people now. But I think it starts before that. We need to start planting the seed in younger people so that actually we're not having to pick them up at this age and do all the legwork now. If we start that when they're really young and we start getting them really interested and curious about STEM activities, about the industry, then actually we're doing half of the job at that early stage. Yep, absolutely, I get that doesn't help the skills gap at this precise moment, but you invest in it back there, it then kind of comes to fruition later on. And you're right with the communities, and that's how you sort of do that.
Would I be able to add on to that? The question then becomes, well, where are those people spending their time? So part of the business that I'm building is actually trying to build that robust pipeline. So right now I'm actually writing a kid's book for 5 to 7-year-olds about airports, and it's an educational encyclopedia about airports. That it's a storyline, but while they're on the story where there's a toy getting lost in a baggage system, they're also learning about the scanning, x-rays, and where this goes and where that goes and how the airport is run. So kids books is the first place you plant the seed. But then there's an age where they don't care about kids books anymore. Then they just pick up the iPad and all they want to do is be glued to the iPad. Let's be honest, young people just sit there on the iPad all day. Who's heard of a game called Roblox? Anyone heard of Roblox by any chance, right? Anyone's young person is addicted to Roblox, right? I can see it nodding head over there. There's a stat which says 88.9 million users every day spend on average 2.5 hours on this thing called Roblox. Wow. So every day, 88.9 million users. Compare that to Heathrow Airport's annual capacity. That's more people on this app a day than Heathrow Airport in a year. Think about that. They're spending all this time on this game called Roblox. Our team is actually building a game on Roblox which teaches them about all the different careers that they can join in the aviation sector. They can be a ground handler, a pilot, they can be cabin crew, they can be an engineer, they could do anything they want in this virtual game where they're actually interacting with a 3D metaverse. It's the first taste of a metaverse. So the question always is, where are they spending their time? And how do we plant our agenda where they are? It's the idea of this feed, right? The feed is what feeds their minds. But the question becomes, if that's the feed, then who's deciding what's on the menu? And if we're not deciding what's on the menu, then can you blame them? If we're not even present on the menu, can you blame them for not choosing us? We have to be on the thing that's feeding their mind, whether that's books, whether that's games, whether that's social media. We need to figure out where they're spending their time and engineer backwards a solution to capture them from as young as we can.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
I'd like to take that that social media part. I think it's a really strong part, and I must say, like, I just hate being on TikTok, but I am on TikTok and I am on Instagram and all these social media things. But I think there's also an element, like today we're meeting at this event, right? And we need to also make a space that is engaging and involves young professionals to connect and learn with each other. And something we do at the Young Mobility Network is also that we go to events together and we sort of try and coach each other a little bit, support each other. So I think there's a whole topic around empowerment here as well. So how do we also empower another person to become something they would like to achieve? And that is, we talked about mentoring. Reverse mentoring is really interesting, but also going to these events together, team up. And I can see, you know, you're a group of young people here as well. You came together, right? It would be much scarier to come by yourself and think like, oh, how do I, you know, break into this crazy group of people here talking about transport. And that is something I think we need to think about a bit more. How can we also make event spaces more inclusive? How can we foster diversity? And maybe that leads us back to gamification elements. So maybe it is not about talking here on the panel. Maybe we should have, you know, a game going on and we sort of talk about the industry and get to know the industry in a more playful way and a more, like in a way that is more interested to Gen Z, millennials, whoever is out there interested in our industry. So I think that is something to think about in the future.
I think the word there is enjoyment.
Yeah.
How can we get them to enjoy it? There's a study from the Department for Transport about aviation and maritime careers. And in that study, they ask young people, what is it about a career that would actually make you want to pursue it? And 70% of them chose enjoyment as the number one thing that they want in a career, which then when you tie it into gamification, you can plant that enjoyment directly at the source. Yeah. You mentioned there about educating the educator. That's like a two-pronged approach. You're kind of like two degrees of separation away. We're in an age where you can get straight to their pocket. I feel like educating the educator is the long way around. We can go straight to them.
Lisa,
but I would just add to that the educators are being educated. So when I got up this morning and I turned the telly on, your local news came on. Would you believe the lead story was about a local school who really are injecting some energy into their careers advice? When I was at school, the algorithm told you were going to be a brain surgeon. It was rubbish. But I know that you are getting a much better service. Locally, apparently, your schools are sending some of the school children, I assume they're 16 plus, into FE colleges to experience bricklaying, designing, looking after snakes and things for vet care, animal care, whatever it is that floats your boat. So you personally can get an experience in the area that you have an interest in, see firsthand. And the other thing you have at your disposal, which is like magic, is AI. Mo's point about instant information. I practice with the different AI apps 15 minutes every day just to make sure that I learn one small thing. You people, you inhale it, it naturally comes to you, and you can ask ChatGPT or whatever app is your preference about careers in all sorts of areas, and the wealth of information is there at your fingertips. How many of you are using ChatGPT or any AI app on a regular basis?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Very regular.
And I don't mean for essays at school, I mean just in general, you know, for research.
Does anybody have any questions about anything that you'd like to ask our panel before we wrap up? Anything at all? Last chance. Well, if you want to approach them directly, I'm sure you were happy to answer any questions. But for now, everybody, let's give our panel a round of applause, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much. Really, really enlightening. And it's good to hear the money's good. It's good to hear the money is good. So I remember when I was at school, nobody ever talked about the money, ever, you know?
Whenever I go in school and I talk about, obviously, what kind of careers we do.
Yeah.
And the first question is, how much do you earn?
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you that, but I can tell you this scale.
Exactly. My nephew is obsessed with how much money I make. You know, so it's important. People want to know.
That's obviously what's interesting to
Exactly.
them, and it's drive
But, you
them,
know,
that's what we need to kind of hone in on, into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it's, thank you all for, sharing your time this morning. It's been great. And also just knowing about connections. Connections, like you say, are really important. So networking, a lot of jobs, like I say, come through the people you know, as opposed to what's advertised. I think, I'm sure, Lisa, you'll be able to talk to us about that at another time, maybe. But thank you, panel. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nicola.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks.